Welcome everybody to the great legal shift of 2021. And we're going to be talking to Kevin today, and so graciously giving us an hour of your time, Kevin, to talk about, with this audience in particular, procurement's role in adding value to the business, not only the business bottom line, but how your privacy law compliance technology really helps to achieve operational excellence and contribute to strategy in the world we're living in these days. So I'll just start right off the bat with some questions, and this needs to be casual, back and forth. If you want to add something, Kevin, feel free. So we just want to make sure we're getting as much information to the audience that you want to give. And no, this is a new audience, and maybe a lot of them are new to ONETRUST or have heard about it. I don't know how you don't hear about this on the cover of Inc. magazine. Sorry, it's not you, Kevin. Yeah, but you know, this is Kabir Barde, the CEO, and it's a fascinating story. So I think we'll start there, just if you don't mind, just giving our audience, our viewers, a little bit about the ONETRUST story, because it's not only is it a great entrepreneurial story, first generation immigrant story, but just a true innovation story of somebody that's seeing so far ahead of the curve.
Yeah, well, thanks, Lee. And listen, I'm so excited to be here with this audience today, and at a very relevant time, I think, in the industry. Our story is a pretty unique one, and we're very proud of it. Kabir, in particular, of course, as the visionary behind making all of it happen. Several of us had worked closely together at another startup, and a quick story on that. We were in an interesting market, mobile security at a time when there was a lot happening as well. And I think it was back then that you could see there was this increasing concern over how deeply interwoven mobile devices were becoming in our lives, but also the privacy implications for that. If a company was managing your device and they could apply security policies to it, they might also have some view into what apps you were loading or what information was going onto that device. And in a world where you might have dating apps, religious apps, any number of things on that device, there were obvious privacy concerns that were really starting to take shape. And we saw that even back then, that sometimes our tools weren't being well adopted because of these privacy concerns. And again, this is 10 years ago.
Right.
In the years since, started thinking through, and Kabir kind of went off with this idea and started building something else, it became even more apparent. And of course, since then, we've seen the GDPR and CCPA and a number of other privacy regulations that really gave teeth to those concerns and made it a compliance concern. So that was kind of where things started. As you noted, we've been through a lot of growth. In just under 5 years, we've gone from startup to today, the fastest growing company in America, as noted in that article. We've closed now 3 rounds of funding just in the last 18 months, a Series A, B, and C, raising over $700 million at a $5.1 billion valuation, and experienced tremendous growth with our clients, now over 8,000 customers and 1,500 employees. So very, very fast growth in a short amount of time. And it all comes back to, again, an unserved need in the market today for compliance technology that we've been fortunate to really be able to deliver unique solutions for.
That's perfectly said. And I would say just the numbers alone speak to the need and the way the law is moving, that it's privacy law, privacy legal compliance technology in one, so to speak. Those are no longer siloed or cannot afford to be anymore. Right. And so that's what makes me excited. The other part of that too is that it's not only for the corporation, but it makes it so user-friendly for the human on the other end as well. The consumer has a lot of protection. So that was one of the things that drew me to your tool in the first place. So about the ONETRUST, the modules itself, the technology, would you speak to a little bit about how how you guys have designed compliance into the tool, how you can use it to not only, step one, you want a compliant organization. Foundationally, you've got to do that, but then how the design of it can be customized to see patterns of risk within an industry, or how it can be used to predict and avoid litigation instead of just controlling legal spin, which has kind of been how the legal community has looked at legal never being a value add, but a control cost center, if you don't mind. That's what excites me about OneTrust, actually, the potential there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, we've now branched into 6 different areas, and I started with privacy in the story I just shared, because that was where we began, and privacy again was one of these things that was loosely understood to be maybe a concern for the security team, but it didn't go much further than that, and of course we've seen that perception really change over the last few years. But whether it's privacy or any of the other areas that we focus on today around general compliance and governance, risk, third-party risk, ethics, each of these areas has a tremendous amount of overhead for an organization to look at the reporting that needs to be done. And are we being good stewards of the information or the issue area that the company is trying to get their hands around? So when we see data flowing through our companies at an ever-growing pace, and this just continues to again become a bigger and bigger problem, how are you managing that? How can people as a team try to keep their hands around all of the activity across their organization? There are a lot of really tough problems here that will still always require that level of human analysis and intervention. But there's a lot that's really well suited to technology as well. When you talk about being able to do some of these things at scale and keep up with, again, the ever-growing amount of data that each organization has in each one of these areas and what might be a risk. Do we have good processes in place? Do we audit those processes and make sure that, again, we're being compliant? Are there efficient workflows that are happening throughout that process? Can we automate some of that perhaps by taking an API feed from one tool or another and connecting those dots? Again, a lot of this comes back to technology really being able to solve that problem at a level of efficiency that not only is tremendously effective, but just allows you as an attorney to be more focused perhaps on what you need to be on, or if it's procurement or any other function in the company, and let the system surface up this information. So not only can we do that internally within an organization and be able to ingest vast amounts of data, but the fact that we can do this at scale across thousands of companies also allows us to do some benchmarking and level setting in a way that respects and protects the privacy of that data, but allows us to, again, at a high level, do some pattern matching and identification of where we see risk areas. If we can look across thousands of customers that are working the same way and perhaps integrating their systems with certain suppliers and operating in certain jurisdictions, you start putting all these different variables together. And again, we can recognize that some companies are doing things similarly, and what are the problems that they're running into? Have there been compliance concerns? Have there been data breaches? It really gives us almost a future crimes sort of capability to look into how a client is working and identify potential risks down the line. We do this, again, not only through having this perspective of thousands of customers, but then applying a layer of artificial intelligence on top of that, that really gives us that foresight into how things are working and what problems might arise.
And I'll speak on the micro level within a company, within a corporation, using the same analogy that you did, being able to see that risk or see the growth area. Once you have that under control, being able to use your data and analyze it for insights that says, yes, this is where now I want my company to go geographically. This is where I can now afford to take a risk I couldn't, because you have complete transparency into the data, the risk, across the entire organization. That to me is like, I get very excited. It makes me, a nerd, I guess, but thinking about, no, legal's not over here in this corner and procurement doing this. And then, okay, the CFO has got to worry about this. But when you understand in a data economy how all of these things have to work together, it's actually, it's no longer like, oh my gosh, we have to be compliant. It's like, whoosh, the most forward thinking companies are working with you. And so that's what I like about you guys. And your culture, your culture stays true at scale too. I will say that, and that's remarkable in a short amount of time. Just for the audience to know, he's talking about 48,337.2% growth in 3 years. So when you have scaling issues from 20 people to 50, it's not quite, we don't have any scaling issues. So I'm impressed with how you've kept your your culture and your people being very warm and down to earth to work with as well. So anyway, that's just pure free advertising, but it's true. So let's start. Sure. Let's start with a topic that, you know, you can't really have an interview without discussing COVID in some way or another, whether we want to or not. But what have you seen? What have you seen with vendor selection or people coming to you, or what advice do you have for this particular group with legal procurement on moving forward compared to the stopgap that everybody had to do last year? What would be your advice on how to make proper next steps with this kind of technology purchase for their company?
Yeah, well, if I may, just very briefly to finish on the point that you made, because I think it's one that we really try to emphasize, and that is our people, our culture. It's been something, when you scale as fast as we've been fortunate to scale, if you don't have that sort of internal system in place, and by system I mean culture, it's never going to work. So hiring for that and then continually reinforcing it. We've been really fortunate to hire well. But again, keeping everybody on that same page with a good culture. And that translates into the way that we work with our clients as well, and the users of our technology, making sure that they're well enabled on it. We've always provided free training, and we also do a lot of research and analysis. One thing I'll mention to all the viewers today is our data guidance offering. We have a solution that is there's a free research and analysis service. There's 2 levels to it, but that any of your viewers can subscribe to, that provides a lot of insight into what's changing with regulations. Not only what's being done today in a given market that they've been working in, we can tell them about laws that are taking shape, perhaps litigation or enforcement actions. And we routinely brief a lot of the regulators as well and get feedback from them on what their priorities are and what they're seeing. So again, one more way I think that we really like to work with our clients that's a little bit different, and making sure that not only are they enabled, but informed on the capabilities. And that goes beyond even our own products, just on the area.
Sure.
I'll use that as a good segue, though, to get into COVID, because of course this has been a big driver for a lot of things that we've seen change over the last year. Companies in a big rush to put in stopgap measures over the last year. A lot of organizations, of course, had to make a very quick pivot to remote workforces, as an example. And in the process, they might have onboarded a lot of vendors very quickly, not done the level of diligence that they'd like to. And that's why I think right now it's a good time to step back as we start a new year and look at what's changed in your own organization. Where are some of the risks on that? What's working, what's not working? Are there concerns here from a compliance perspective that maybe we could get ahead of? Head off what might either be a violation or even litigation down the line, by trying to get a better idea of who we're working with, what data we're sharing with them, how are they utilizing it? Do we have a good understanding of where those boundaries are, and what happens at the end of the life when we offboard that vendor? What happens to our data, and will it continue to carry the level of protection that we need it to? So these are just a couple of examples, but I know there are a lot of organizations going through this process right now, and we see some that really get it. Choosing a partner isn't just about the technology itself, it's about consulting that might come with it, the relationship. Again, do we have a good agreement in place that recognizes all this? And is that being looked at across the organization versus in just a very siloed mindset? Again, it was so easy over the last year, when so much was changing, for organizations to make very quick sort of reflexive decisions on some of these things without having the opportunity to really think them through. That was a great time to be going back and looking at a lot of that.
That's what I think, that's what made our partnership or our relationship great timing, and the same mindset with, there's just no way you can give it to IT or just consulting or just legal or just, it's highly relational now, and to be able to understand data across all of the departments. And then implementing is one thing. Like, implementing is setting up, but it's a daily relationship, not only strategically with you guys, but with your customer, of setting metrics, setting measurements, which you guys are great at, but how is this affecting the partners you work with? Have to understand how it affects across the business to be able to really create value at the top of the line, not just the business bottom line as well. And so speak to you a little bit about that mindset, I guess, with your specific clients. Like I know you guys are with half of the Fortune 500, 9 of the 10, I'm going to get 9 of the 10 top grossing law firms, I think, in the world. By the way, they're a hugely global company. We're talking about we're talking about Inc. 5000, Inc. 500, and American things. But that obviously that was one of the. You can't not be global now and compete at your level or our level when you're dealing with data. So just talk a little bit about that, if you don't mind, about the kinds of legal buyers needing. What if they need to understand about both sides of the house, or how they can contribute to that, what we're talking about across the whole business with their choices. So not just IT or hiring a consultant and then going back to work. It just doesn't work that way.
No, quite right. And look, you got it. We have been fortunate to get to work with so many of the largest law firms around the world, 9 of the 10 largest, highest grossing global law firms, as you mentioned. I think those stats pretty well carry across different markets too. If you look at the 100, if you look at even taking that out to the Fortune 100, I think we're at about 70%. So any large multinational organization, but even a lot of smaller companies are increasingly concerned for some of these areas. Again, here in the United States, there's a number of state laws that are going to be relevant for this, and organizations recognizing that they've got to adjust and be prepared to manage their own compliance to those programs, to those regulations. I would say I think it's really kind of a unique aspect of what makes our partnership with Level Legal so well set, that we can together take more of a holistic approach in the way that we're supporting a client's needs and addressing the problems that they have. Your firm has a great job of really understanding the issues that a corporate legal buyer has day to day, and the way that they're trying to drive towards their own priorities, whatever might be in each organization. You have a very close understanding of how to support those and help them get there. I think we can represent that our product is really well aligned to solving some of those technology problems that they have. Again, pulling all the different pieces together, being able to really build out programmatically the needs that they're going to have for tooling to stay compliant. So you put these two pieces together, and again, it is a really, really well-matched solution for, I think, a lot of clients' needs, a lot of company needs today.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's exciting to be able to have a tool like this. The first time I've seen where you're not who's got what spreadsheet type situation, or forcing an e-discovery tool onto a compliance workflow. It doesn't necessarily work. But to have this as the foundation, and foundation does not do it justice. I mean, you're constantly iterating in OneTrust, some features coming out all of the time, and always with the customer in mind. But it allows, for the first time that I've seen, now corporations can really use this data in a way to grow. I mean, that's what's so amazing. And so that's where, if you look at a Microsoft, or you look at your partners, on the website, who your clients really are, that is where you want to be. That's the kind of, whether you're a provider like us or a product person like you got to be thinking that way to not just survive. I mean, not just thrive, but to survive. So it is like a new frontier, kind of, to see privacy law, compliance, technology intersecting, or in this way. So being in innovation, this is kind of fun. So when you see what you've done. So let's talk a little bit about, so when the audience here, when the attendees go back to work today, and they say, okay, now what? I mean, besides education, obviously, is a part, like you said, with your free training, but how can they best work with their teams, their legal or their compliance teams? How do they start that conversation that allows their companies to see the value of what we're talking about here today, and not just checking a box on a procurement contract, if you will, but to really have an opportunity to do something meaningful in their organization?
Yeah, well, again, I think it's a great time to be revisiting some of these issues for most companies. And the best advice I can give is to really start trying to move into more of a proactive posture on how procurement is working with legal and their compliance teams. Too often we see companies that are very reactive, and perhaps nobody gets involved, or there's very little scrutiny that's done unless there's a problem. And at that point, you're really just trying to clean up a mess. It's too late
Right.
to get ahead of it. So I would encourage companies to again go back, look at who you're working with, look at those partnerships, and what are they doing for you?
Mm.
Where's the data going? How is it being utilized? If you have a strong understanding of what the lineage is of that data as it moves between your organizations, and what risk that might represent. And this is again just one example. I think a lot of companies also, unfortunately, fall into a trap of being, again, so reflexive that they've made decisions in a very narrow context, perhaps just one small business problem. And it
True.
wasn't done with a broader perspective of how would we use this technology or this partner across our operations. So those sort of siloed decisions can also lead to a lot of redundancy. You may find that you've got multiple partners offering very similar services. That's not efficient. It can also create
Mm.
its own risk. Anything that you can do to rationalize that back to the best solution for meeting your needs, and that's from a cost perspective, but also from a solvency or technology perspective, always makes sense. And trying to stay vigilant about
Right.
getting too comfortable. I've known this vendor for a long time, and maybe I can just rely on that. Try to remember that core to your program being successful, of course, is always being on the lookout for what's changing.
Mhm.
How can we be more educated on what has evolved here? Are we getting, again, the best value from a particular partner? Are we getting the best fit for our needs? Is the product the one that is safest for what our organization is trying to do? A lot of this can be metriced, and clients need to be thinking through exactly how they should be measuring and holding their partners accountable. Um, we are very proud of the fact that we offer a lot of training on this area in
Mhm.
particular, and I mentioned our data guidance research subscription, which is a great way of getting ongoing information on this. But beyond that, we also offer our own certification on our solutions, and also in particular on some of these third-party risk areas that we focus on with our technology. So these can be great ways to sort of, again, refresh your own thinking about how your company is working and how you could be working with some of your partners.
And I'll add to that in speaking to the audience, and they'll understand how significant this is. So, when you work with legal tech vendors, a lot of, and one of the parts of my job is to vet new technology, and hence this relationship. But a lot of times you're putting money down, you've got 30 days, you're only in a sandbox with Enron data to only do very limited things, and then you're forced into a contract later. Or, it's always, am I doing the right thing? Is this really going to work? And you're kind of hurried into a decision. So how we started talking and working was, for real, their certifications are free, and they're not easy. They're not like, oh, attend for an hour, make 100. It's like, okay. And so I did one and realized this is it. And I had been talking to you guys for a while, comparing notes, and then I went back to work and said, okay, 10 people. We have a technology working group that helps vet technology. I said, all right, go get your certifications. It's free. Tell me what you think, because we've been seconded with some other corporations doing privacy work with, for sure, the wrong, our tools that were being refurbished. How about that, to use for privacy workflows? Anyway, so the attorneys were like, loved it. So all 10 of us had our analyst certifications. Some have gone on with no obligation. It's an educational culture, a learning culture. They're wide open to us asking a million questions. You can ask Mark, ask them a million questions before we even ever talked about something formal. That's huge. And so you're not tied into anything. It's like wide open. wanting us to learn, and then putting the partnership together. So in this particular industry with legal tech, that is disruptive, actually. And so it goes to show to the purity of the purpose and the spirit with which you have built this. And so that's why it's very refreshing. And I love that it came outside of legal and is kind of elevating the whole industry. So that's a personal, but that's truly how we got involved with you.
Well,
it was all free. So,
yeah.
Right. So you can actually get in there and see and play and understand, oh, this is how it works. And then you see a lot of it is preventing human error. I mean, it's much more advanced than that, but a lot of it just helps you create a system that one of the biggest reasons we have issues is human error or humans not understanding what they did. And so it takes that pain away. So
no, that's
anyway.
great. And Leigh, on that point, I'll emphasize, if anyone else here in attendance today would like to attend any of those trainings, as you noted, they are free. This is a absolute positive consequence of COVID. Mm-hmm. We used to do those courses in person, and we were very strict about only doing them in person when a lot of clients were demanding, that we offer them online. And it was done throughout the globe, throughout the country. We would do about 200 events a year. And a lot of these events are bringing together a local chapter of attorneys and other practitioners to talk about some of these issue areas. And then we would typically have a second day that did the training and certification. Obviously, we couldn't do that over the past year. So it really was a catalyst for us to go move all this training and these different programs online. As you noted, the certification and the related training of it is typically a pretty short program. You can do this in under a day. So even if you're not today using our products, I think it can be very helpful to understand a bit about how we approach some of these problems. And again, I think a lot of your audience today is probably working on these areas themselves. And it could be, again, a good way to get a little familiarization around what's possible through technology, whether you're using our product or not, and how are we approaching some of those problems.
It's absolutely. So, okay, I think we are getting closer to Q&A time, but just a few more questions if that's all right.
Great.
So given the, we've bought the tool, we've implemented it, we've done all of that correctly, and then we're into managing now. So we've got I call us the workhorses. You've got the data people that understand how data works across the company. So we're managing the tool, whether it's in-house or us or whoever. So can you just kind of drill down into that a little bit deeper on the importance of how compliance is managed in a corporation, since that's really, I think, obviously one of your areas of expertise. I think that piece gets like, oh, we got it, we implemented it, and everybody kind of expects it like done. Like you got the product on the shelf, now it'll sell, but you got to keep managing it. So.
Yeah. It's a common problem, I think, that we see as well. It's the old adage of if you only have a hammer, the world looks like it's all nails. And that's very true here, that a lot of external service providers, we'll see that they have a toolkit, quote unquote, that they work with, and they have a difficult time understanding maybe the client's problem because it's not presented in the context of their tool. It's the client has their own unique issues that may or may not be well aligned with that toolkit that the partner offers. So having some flexibility, understanding that it's not going to be a one size fits all sort of thing. A lot of this is also highly dependent on the industry. Each industry, and this is very true today, may have its own unique sensitivities, and there's some nuance around what data is being used and who your partners are, how you work with them. All of those workflows are going to be different from client to client, and you've got to have some flexibility in the tool that you select. I know legal buyers are asking us to solve that problem in a way that's very unique to them. So for us, as tool and services providers, how do we approach that differently? How do we come to them with something that has the flexibility to really be bespoke to their needs? That's been, I would say, a big part of our success over the last few years, is that we didn't try to force just a standard way of doing it, whatever that problem might have been for the client, but rather understanding their unique needs and making sure that we had the ability to customize our solution in the way that it worked for them, in the way that it supported their specific concerns.
No, I love all of the options to create your own notifications, create your own workflows, depending on what your client needs or where they have a pain point. Not just the templates are wonderful. Don't get me wrong, but the option to do your own, creative, depending on how you're supporting your client. There's got a ton of that is just built in for you to take it to the next level in your own corporation. So
yeah.
So
I mentioned before, a lot of the information that legal teams are probably trying to find is locked up in some siloed solution somewhere. So do you have the ability to go interrogate or pull from those different systems and do it in a real-time, active way that is continually being refreshed and kept current? These are really, really key issues. We can't just go do a one-time sort of discovery run or import, but rather doing this on an ongoing basis so the information is kept evergreen. And hopefully that beyond that is not just passively reporting on things, but actively kicking off workflows or initiating when we see a problem, alerting the teams to it, and then triggering some sort of remediation or reporting exercise behind it. Again, that's fundamental to what we provide across our tool set.
Yes, and one thing he just says is very important and is real time. And so if I can bring that to the legal industry, if that can be my legacy, that is it. Is real time, active, not billing 30 days later. Or you're in it, it's on it, it's telling you a law has been updated. There's red flag here, and you've got it going through the system to get your attention pretty much in real time. So that's how you win. That's how companies win. So I love that. So tell us, there are the times, and obviously here, we've all been burned. Not all of us, but some of us have, bought the wrong technology. Or how do you handle that? It ends up not solving the problem. When you're talking with somebody, and they're like, "Well, they said that it had this feature, but it really never got to the outcome they wanted to." So is there any advice that you could have for the group here as they start vetting and they're looking, obviously with you guys, but your next nearest competitor, I'm not sure, is way behind, but still, what are the things that they can ask to know, if you don't mind just sharing some of those that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think Lee, again, in this area has been through a lot of growth, and we're part of that over the last few years. And as that's happened, there's been a lot more attention. I think you're seeing more professional industry analysis being done. Names like Gartner and Forrester and other firms, IDC, Infotech, there's a number of them that are now reporting on this market. So if you want an independent yardstick on sort of what vendors are out there and how they might meet your needs, I always encourage people to go look at some of that reporting. And in fact, we license a lot of the reporting and make it available through our website. So don't take my word for it or any of our teams. Please feel free to go out and see what these independent analysts say about our technology or about others, if there might be something that's a better fit for you. You'll find all of that available on our website, and very easy to pull down a quick report that gives you an overview of here are the major vendors and their strengths and weaknesses for each one. Beyond that, though, I always encourage our clients to take sort of a crawl, walk, run approach. Start small. Let's meet those immediate needs. For a lot of organizations, they know that eventually they want to get into a broader, more comprehensive suite of capabilities. But that'd be biting off more than they could chew right now to try to do all of that. So let's start with the one or two things that are really burning priorities, and then you can add on other capabilities. And in our world, we've built our product in a very modular way for just that reason. So today we have over 20 different modules that a client could use. Doesn't mean that they have to. It truly is a menu of capabilities, and they can start with the ones that really matter to them the most. If they never grow beyond those, wonderful. We met the need and we did what they needed us to. But I think what's really important here is that we have built out a platform, and we continue to grow it that allows customers to grow into the solution versus growing out of it. And that's really, really different. A lot of these solutions out there you'll find may be good in one area, but they don't offer other capabilities, or they're very weak in another area. We want to make this one of our hallmarks, is that we can offer a comprehensive set of capabilities, but that we do it in a way that doesn't force you to take on more than you need, or add cost or complexity. So that's a really, really important thing to emphasize here, is that you can start with just those one or two modules that might be relevant today.
Sure, and privacy was the first module, and I think that's how people first knew of you, and you're,
Right.
And so now getting the word out, excuse me, with the GRC module, I mean the ethics module, and in this group the procurement and vendorpedia and all of that, it's amazing what you guys have built, and built strongly. But I love that approach. We obviously follow the same thing: crawl, walk, run. You don't have to buy the whole shebang and be tied to something. It's very little risk there as you get the data organized and prioritized to match your growth plan, in your business. Or obviously, if it's compliance emergency, like get it taken care of quickly. And so that formula is not necessarily something in the legal world we're used to either. And so there's just lots of opportunity, I think, for the two to go well. And I'm excited to share you with them.
I'll offer a couple of examples of that. In privacy, as you mentioned, we really started off with a couple of capabilities that were core to helping customers build out compliance programs for the European GDPR law. One of the functions there is consumer rights, being able to, as a consumer, go to a given company and say, what information do you have on me? The California law has this enshrined in it, as does the GDPR, and a number of other laws that are coming will also afford consumers the same right. That's a very complex problem when you think about being able to ingest the request, make sure it's valid, and that we trust that this is the person that is who they say they are. You don't want to have a data breach in the process of trying to meet a privacy law. But that's just one capability of how do we support that, and how do we effectively put all the information together and get it back to that consumer. A lot of our clients, again, want to add other functions beyond that, getting some idea of data mapping, or being able to do privacy impact assessment. So again, just in the privacy sphere, you have the ability to quickly add things that you might need. You mentioned Vendorpedia, which is our third-party risk platform. Again, I think something probably really relevant for this audience. In that tool, you have the capability to go out and understand who are your vendors, what do we know about them. This is a lot of data that we've sourced across working with thousands of clients, so that we can give you a very informed picture of what security risks or compliance concerns. Has this vendor has a breach in the past X number of years? What certifications do they carry, et cetera? We also will help with a separate module there for being able to automate questionnaire responses and take a lot of the back and forth out of the way for that. Whether you're trying to solicit information from a potential vendor, or if you are in your own organization responding to these sort of questionnaires, again, there's a lot of manual overhead that those exercises carry. These are just a couple of examples in just a couple of areas of the product set. And again, there are now 6 different sort of issue areas. You mentioned ethics as another example, and each one of these then has sub-modules behind it. So this is really, really important, and something I want to emphasize to your audience, that you can always start small with just one of these specific areas that are an urgent need for you, and then add others if they become relevant.
And it's got a crowdsourced kind of feel to it too, the Vendorpedia. I mean, it's not just you guys downloading it and we're receiving it, but as we upload vendors and check them out, and we can at least let others know this is their workflow, these are the questions, this is what we know, and it's clearly marked, this came from ONETRUST, this came from another partner. And so that communal feel, community, because it has to be in this world for us to all succeed. But I like that part of it too, because you don't see that very often either in legal. So I guess closing here, one last question. I mean, what do you see? Goodness, what do you see? What question do I want to end on? Let's see. No, I mean, what do you see as the most important changes, I would say, from the way legal behavior has been as far as buying and purchasing in the past, and then now where we are just with the post-COVID, really. I mean, there has to be a line there, and what is expected, and how on earth to handle all of these changes and avoid penalties. Let's just start there. That cost alone, much less how to be strategic if you want to grow. But what would you leave everybody with? That what kind of measures along the way, or what is the most important change?
Yeah, well, I would say we're at a point where a lot of organizations are truly evolving and maturing in some big, important ways, and moving from maybe I'm just doing the bare minimum to be compliant with the law, to trying to be a little more thoughtful about where this could be going, and what does this mean for my organization? What does it mean for my brand, perhaps? So whether it's privacy or security or governance or ethics, each of these areas has a fundamental sort of foundational legal concern, right? I've got to be compliant with the law and making sure that we're avoiding litigation or some other sort of enforcement or prosecution that those laws might carry. But going beyond that and sort of actualizing what it might mean for your organization, each of these is actually a real brand strength. You, as a consumer, are going to work with companies that you trust, right? If I'm giving my data to Apple or to Facebook or to any of these companies, part of the thought process is, do I trust them? And how are they going to utilize it? And can I expect them to maybe be honest with me about it, or do things that I wouldn't want them to do with it? That's a really, really important element of every company's brand. And you see them now starting to do more to market on this basis. So as you tie that back to what we're talking about today, and how I might work with my suppliers, and how I'm working to vet them and any risks that might come from working with them, these concerns are all really real relevant. And that's the evolution I talk about, is right, getting away from just, hey, we need to check these 16 boxes to make sure that we're not going to get a lawsuit or get in some sort of trouble for this, to, are we really driving in the right direction with the vendors that we're selecting, that we're choosing to partner with, and how they work? Do those represent our company's brands? Because while a law might prescribe, again, those 16 check boxes today, there are a lot more coming. And beyond the laws themselves, those are being driven by typically consumer sentiment. That's what gets it onto the ballot or gets it in front of the legislature, because there's an awareness that there's real risk here for data theft, identity theft, privacy, all of these issues. So trying to incorporate that into your own program, and how you're working with your suppliers and your attorneys are working to really get ahead of it. Privacy, again, coming back to this one last time, California, of course, made a big splash with CCPA when that went live last year. But there's now 17 other states that are in some form of either considering legislation or passing it, or it's already on the books and now going into enforcement. So this is an issue area that's not going to go away, and solving for just one of those perhaps laws is never going to be enough. You're going to be left with a patchwork of different laws and regulations you got to comply with. Trying to instead build towards a more comprehensive program internally is really going to be the way that I think most organizations are going to arrive at.
I mean, who would have thought we'd be connecting compliance with marketing and brand strategy? But I'm absolutely, everybody needs to go back to their corporation and say to their marketing head, what is your compliance strategy? Where's the compliance design, written into your brand strategy? But it's so true. And to that point, you have a module on marketing and compliance, and which is fascinating in and of itself. But you're right, and the brand, the responsibility, the reputation, and in a consumer-driven economy along with data, these things suddenly every word matters, everything matters when you're building this. So the good news is it's an exciting time. It's not a time to panic, because the technology is there and the human acumen is there as well. So it's actually it's accelerated some change the last year or two that we've needed And so I appreciate it. And Kevin, thank you so much. If there's anything else you want to add that we didn't hit on that's important for you to say or to let our audience know, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lee. No, I'll say it again. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to your audience and talk about something that, again, I feel is really relevant right now. So I'll offer again, if there are any ways that we can be supporting any of your clients, of course, I'm very proud of the partnership that we've built with your firm. And again, I think it's a unique mix here that really will help solve a lot of companies' issues as they go out and look at this market. The right mix of product and services here for sure. Beyond that, of course, again, the training or research that we make available through our website. If any of you in attendance today are looking at some of these issues or trying to identify where your organization might improve, please feel free to take me up on that offer. You'll find a wealth of research on our website. Some of it we've published, again, through our data guidance offering and the analysis that we do there. But there's also a lot of industry analysis from some of the big research firms that cover technology or legal tech more specifically. And you'll find those also available through our website, in addition to the training and certification offers that we mentioned before.
Great. And you can always just pick up the phone as well. So, we're all very easy to talk to. I know. So I appreciate it. So Sylvia, do you have any questions?
I do have a couple of questions.
Okay, sure.
One that I'd really like to know. So in terms of compliance, is it enough to just have like one solution or one software, or does it make more sense to have like a sort of series of solutions? What is the current state of affairs?
Well, Lee, I'll let you jump on it as well, but I'd say, compliance is a very, very big, broad term. So it would have to depend on what you're trying to be compliant with. Again, there's a lot here that we can talk to around the issues we've discussed in today's call. But depending on what a client is trying to be, quote unquote, compliant with is a much, much broader issue.
And I'll add a bit of a different perspective. Sometimes we get hung up on the tool. Is the tool enough? Do I need another tool? Thinking the tool is the solution. The workflows are what you've got to get right. The tool is probably more than adequate, depending on, like, we don't know what industry it is. Like Kevin was saying, it could be something that is highly unique. But having the people behind it that understand the data economy, that understand risk, compliance, understand how this works together, and they're building the workflows for you, and they're there. They understand when a lawsuit comes in, they know how to do the traditional, of course we've got your back end covered. That's easy, so to speak, not really, but you know what I mean. Of course we can host and process and all of that, but we know you inside and out. We are actually, the workflows are going to keep you from getting there. That's what's so good about ONETRUST. It's predicting and it's stopping. It's earlier in the life cycle of law where you're not going to get, hopefully, litigation. So that's the value. So first, whoever that is, I would say, let's talk about the workflows. That's, if your provider's got to be really, really strong with understanding how to do the workflow, and the tool will probably perform just fine.
So does that, since we said, the topic of today's talk was the great legal shift of procurement's role in adding value to the bottom line. So would you say that the first step to make sure that the organization that our audience works for is compliant and is safe and all this, is it really to look at workflows, or what is like the first thing that everyone really needs to do to add value?
Call Kevin or call us.
Either one. I actually would love both of your thoughts on that. What is like the most important thing, the sine qua non? You need to start this.
Yeah.
As the first step.
Well, I would say any sort of client relationship there, or supplier relationship, I should say, you're going to want to do a baseline assessment of what is that supplier, that vendor, that partner, consultant, whatever it might be, providing for you, and what information or exchange is going to be happening as part of that. A lot of these concerns, again, will typically come back to looking at that and the sensitivity of any information that's being shared, the business operational risk, getting some sort of assessment of not only what the perceived partnership would look like, but who is this organization, and have you done sufficient diligence to know that they're going to be able to safely meet their obligations under it? Are they a well-run company? Are they secure? Again, we keep coming back to security. Can you have some trust that they're gonna uphold the obligations that you expect of them? A lot of that can be done through a baseline assessment. And again, most organizations actually do a pretty good job of this up front. Very few organizations do a good job of doing that on an ongoing basis, making sure that it's being kept up, that it's maintained. But yeah, I don't know if you'd add anything to that.
Yeah. Oh, I'll add. So why I think procurement has a unique opportunity right now, because most of you probably report to the CFO. That is a huge opportunity here for you to shine. For you, you have access to showing and proving the value, whereas maybe legal is stuck with maybe just reducing legal spend, or they have to, the RFP, how much is, they're stuck sometimes. So procurement, being educated would be what I would say is first, and this is the introduction to that, this little bit today. Understanding how much value you can add to your business and your to what you do by taking that holistic approach and being able to speak that language to your CFO or CEO, because that's where the real change is going to be. And we've given you a taste of that now, but knowing that you're crunching the numbers in that way, a little bit in a different way than maybe straight legal. Number one, be educated to what we're talking about and how it can add value for your company. And then, start doing an analysis, like Kevin said, and doing the real, due diligence behind choosing the right partner. And I would say somebody that's open. It's highly relational when you're talking about humans and privacy and the ethics behind it and consequences. It's not just compliance like a policy. We're talking about, human beings. And so those relationships really matter.